Thank you for joining us today. My name is Corey Greenberg, and I'm the outreach manager here at Pack Prep. We are so excited to share what makes Pack Prep special with all of you. We work exclusively one-on-one, one student to one teacher, and we do this online, which means tons of flexibility for families and also the opportunity for us to handpick the perfect teachers for each student, not just who happens to live nearby. We send learning materials directly to families. So after we learn about each student and curate their curriculum, those materials are delivered to their doorstep. Because it's one-on-one, learning happens more efficiently each day, and each child doesn't become lost in a sea of other students or other learning levels. The focus is on them and their goals. We're pleased to share why we truly believe this model is the most thoughtful, student-centered approach available. Before we dive in, a couple of notes. You'll receive a copy of this recording, so no need to take notes unless you'd like to. You should find a Q&A option at the bottom of your screen, and you're welcome to add your questions there, and we'll answer them at the end. We'll get to as many as we can, but if you have any follow-up questions, we would love to hear from you directly. I'm going to give you a quick preview of what we're going to talk about today. First, I'll introduce you to our amazing team and then dive into why our philosophy and teaching model really helps students reach their full potential. Then we'll tell you a bit about the teachers at Pack Prep, and you'll get to hear directly from one of them and get a glimpse into a live lesson from one of our students. Next, we'll hear from Erica about the thoughtful way she designs the curriculum for each individual student and talk about how we address socialization within the one-to-one model. Stacy will give us the details on the admissions process, tuition, and different course options. And then lastly, we'll leave some time for Q&A. So here's your panel for today. My name's Corey. I'm the outreach manager here at Pack Prep. My job is to connect with members of the community, to share a little bit about us, and make some great connections with our professionals in the field so that we can support our students in a holistic way and also just have some great resources to refer them to. We also have Stacy Stutzman here, who is our assistant head of school. She's been with Tutor Corps and Pacific Preparatory for over 6 years, and she does anything and everything for the school. We also have Erica Sneath, who is our academic dean, and she is in charge of all of the students and families' experience, and she also designs all of the curriculum in collaboration with the teachers and the parents. Lastly, we have Beth Ryan, who is one of our star teachers at Pacific Prep. She's been with us for several years now and has worked with all kinds of different students, and you'll get to hear from her and about her a little bit later. What is Pack Prep, and what makes us a truly unique education experience? We offer completely customized one-on-one learning for K-12 students. That means that each student meets live virtually with their teachers every day, and there's no group classes and no brick and mortar locations. Our curriculum is carefully tailored to each student and designed to really engage their unique interests and learning style. Because teachers are actively engaging with their students every single day, they develop truly meaningful relationships and become mentors to them, getting to know them not only as students, but as whole individuals. Because of our customized model, Pack Prep is equipped to work with every student. We have students with diagnosed learning differences, as well as twice exceptional and gifted students, some of whom have mental health or health challenges or other reasons that traditional school setup isn't ideal for them. Any gaps in learning can be quickly identified and closed, so transition back to a more traditional school environment is easier. Or families may choose to stay with us through senior year. We actually had a few graduate with us this past spring. Our leadership team, teachers, and community partners really support your student through every step of the process. We work closely with other schools to ease the transition to and from Pack Prep, providing transcripts, recommendations, and detailed documentation as requested.
So what's really great, I think, about working with Pacific Preparatory and being in the role where I'm at, where I get to talk both with prospective families and also talk with my team and talk with teachers, is that I really get this really cool holistic vision of everyone's why, like why they are coming to our one-on-one school for their family. And what's really great is sort of just the wide range of reasons that people come to us with. I always joke that yes, we are one school. We're called Pacific Preparatory, but at any moment, it feels like we're 100 different schools because we can essentially create a very specific school experience for each and every child. And so in terms of why people come to us, it's really because we and they like to dream up like what could be my perfect school. I always joke, I just actually said this to a parent on the phone earlier today. Like we always say, if you dream it, we can build it. And yes, there are some constraints we need to work within, but it's so cool to sort of see, what does your family want? What does your child need? And how can we make our school work for you? So I think especially coming out of, or like at the beginning of the pandemic, and as it has taken different iterations over the last few years, people are starting to really realize, especially once they got to see their kids learning at home in real time, they were realizing all the ways that a more conventional school approach truly just wasn't working for their child. And this could be for a variety of reasons. Maybe their child has some neurodiversity and they learn in different ways and the brick and mortar environment doesn't work for them. Maybe this is because their family has realized that they don't want to be stuck in one geographic location. They want to travel as a family. They want the freedom to do other things. Maybe this is just simply because their child has a diverse set of interests. They want to do school in the morning and they want to practice their sport or their craft or their interest in the afternoon. We're working with professional athletes, we're working with actors, we're working with all these students who have just such a cool, dynamic, intellectual experience in life. And how do we fit into that puzzle? And once we have this one-on-one model, we can really build your version of Pack Prep to meet your student. And that's what's just great about one-on-one too, is that it can be so efficient so that we don't need to spend butts and seats times 7 to 8 hours a day. We can let your child move, engage in other ways, have curriculum that really taps into and expands their interest, as opposed to trying to get them like square peg round hole. Like, no, let's build the whole system for you. And so all that is to say that I would be remiss to nail down one why, because the why is so different for all of our families. And it's just like our utmost joy to be able to, again, build your unique Pack Prep experience for each and every family. And then at the end, I just hear time and time and time again, like my child like came out of their session and they asked me, hey mom, what's your favorite Shakespeare play? I've never heard my child ask that in their life, but like the idea that they just like cared enough about what was going on in school and felt engaged enough to circle back with their parent to really dive deep and have like a conversation over dinner now versus the typical, I don't know, we did whatever, so it's just really great that we, through this model, get to really just enrich a child and then a whole family's experience of education. So in terms of programs to support your family, then that's my if you can dream it, you can we can build it. But to get down to brass tacks and logistics, we have a ton of different programs we can build out for your family. So usually what I do when I chat with the family is get a sense of like, okay, what do you need? What's your vision? And then how can we build that out? And so for some families, that looks like supplementing their existing schoolwork with single courses. Maybe they're enrolled elsewhere full-time, but really want to have a concentrated one-on-one English class with us to really get their child up to upper level high school honors level English writing. Or maybe they've decided their child wants to enroll with us full-time as a school of record. We can do both of those. And also it's worth noting, if your child is staying enrolled at their current middle school or high school, we work with the schools in the area to make sure they accept our transfer credits so that they can still have a school experience with their existing school, but still integrate Pack Prep into that. And we can take care of all those logistics for you. But we offer any range of core academic classes, all of them high school and middle school math courses, English courses, science, history, social studies. We can also dream up and build enrichment courses. We just were talking with a family earlier this week around an entrepreneurship course. So like we can also build out these special topics, things that are really going to meet your child where they're at and help them, think of really other cool possibilities. We do, art classes, we do language classes, the same sort of courses you would imagine happening in a traditional brick and mortar. But what's cool about ours is that we can build them around special topics and make sure the curriculum is really customized.
Thanks, Stacey. Another thing to add is, we are really a small school that values the relationships between students and teachers, parents, and our leadership team. Collaboration, as Stacey mentioned, is really paramount every step of the way, from first learning all we can about each child and how they best learn, to partnering with teachers and families as we get going to provide feedback and adjust content and teaching strategies to our comprehensive parent conferences and reports. As you can see, if you look up our profile on niche.com, we've received some really lovely reviews from families who have worked with us, some for several years. So I have a quick video I'd like to share with you. This is from one of our parents who had a ninth grader with us.
My name is Mariam, and our son Ari was a Pacific Preparatory student as we bridged from his previous school environment to his next school environment over the course of a little less than a year. One of the impacts that we saw over the course of his time with Pacific Prep was a greater sense of agency in his learning. So as an example, his humanities teacher was working with him on writing about music, because our son really likes music and he likes playing music and making music. He asked our son to write a review of a song. And then that went well, and so then he asked him to write a review of an album. And so in the process of doing that, they decided, hey, wouldn't it be cool to do a blog? And so he helped our son set up a blog. And now our son, even once that course is over, he's still doing the blog. And so he really feels ownership of that and agency over it, and that he's like, his education isn't something that is happening to him. It's something that he is part of creating.
I love what Miriam says about how Ari's experience with PAC Prep was so rich because it didn't feel like the teaching was done to him. He was really a part of the process. The way this works so well is because of our amazing teachers. They're graduates of some of the most prestigious universities, and many hold teaching credentials, special education credentials, and advanced degrees. Our vetting process is quite rigorous, and we provide lots of ongoing support, as well as the freedom to be creative and thoughtful about their students' learning needs. Last year, we had a 97% teacher retention rate, which is honestly pretty unheard of in the field of education right now. As I mentioned earlier, we have one of those amazing people here today, Beth Ryan. Before I turn it over to Beth, we're going to show you a clip of a live lesson with the students so that you can really see our teachers in action. So this is a 6th grade student who's working on a tricky Latin translation with one of our other wonderful teachers. We're going to go ahead and watch the clip, and I'll highlight a couple of things, and then Beth can tell you a little bit more about herself and her experience working with PAC Prep students.
Mihi,
And that's
tell
the native of,
tell me,
yep.
the about Britain.
Good.
Okay. Is Britain's land cold? Or-
You made Britain, listen to what you did to Britain.
I made it like genitive.
You did make it genitive. Dash, I'm so proud of you. Listen to how you just noticed that. You made it. You not only just told me what you did, which is you added an apostrophe. There was multiple conclusions that you just drew right there. You noticed that you added the possessive, and then you understood that the possessive case in Latin is genitive, and then you explained that and articulated it to me. So, but you don't want to do that here, because what does it have a genitive ending on it right now?
No, it's a
No, it's nominative. So you need to make it the subject. Is Britain, and then terra frigida is the predicate nominative. Is Britain a
cold place or
cold
land?
Yep. Is Britain a cold land? So just be very cautious that you don't turn things into things that they're not. And I'm very proud of you for that was impressive how you just untangled that what just happened there. Awesome job.
Thanks. Okay.
When Dash makes an incorrect translation, the teacher gently prompts him to reflect on his work. Our one-to-one model allows the teacher to pause instruction and allows the student to really guide their learning. Our teachers are experts in their content area, but they serve primarily as facilitators who provide the space for students to access the learning target in a pace and format that's really most authentic to them.
Mihi,
Hold on. There we go. So Beth has been a teacher for 20 years, and she began teaching with Pack Prep back in 2019. What sets Beth apart is really how she crafts each lesson to the students' exact learning needs. She listens deeply to students and is always attuned to what they need in that moment. Sometimes that means slowing down the pace and integrating social emotional learning activities. Sometimes that means raising the bar, building in a sense of added challenge and enrichment. No matter the age or the subject area, Beth thoughtfully integrates a student-first approach to her lessons. Okay, I'm turning it over to you now, Beth.
Thanks so much. That was so nice. Like Stacey said at the beginning, everyone kind of comes here for different reasons. And I had the pleasure of working with a lot of students who did not fit into a traditional school because of some mental health challenges. Some were twice exceptional. Some had learning differences that just did not allow them to thrive in a more traditional environment. And starting off really slow, going at their pace is always kind of my go-to. And what ends up happening is because we're able to design the curriculum around their interests and their strengths, we end up going quite deeper than we would have in a traditional school. And in addition to slowing down, we end up adding a lot of rigor in basic skills, math, English, writing. And then also they start to gain an incredible amount of critical thinking skills, investigative qualities about their own education. And I'm always amazed at how rigorous it becomes by slowing down for students that need a little extra time or possibly a little more focus on their own interests. And we end up just doing amazing things. So the next slide, I have some examples from students in the last year. One of my favorites, if you see that little picture of the sand dollar, I had a middle school student for biology, and we were going over the classifications of different animals within the kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. And they started talking about how much they loved sand dollars. And I was like, oh, this is kind of boring, but whatever. And I'm even a researcher. I'm a compulsive researcher by nature. And so even I was like, well, sand dollars, whatever. But the student was adamant. We started a research paper. We found out amazing things. We were using scientific journals that I helped translate, but for the most part, the student was able to get real ongoing research that is going on about sand dollars. One of the things that always amazed me was the student themselves had a collection of sand dollars and was kind of shaking them, and dark sand kept coming out. And they were like, why is that happening? And I said, oh, well, you got them on the beach. There's sand inside. An example of how I can also continuously learn. What we found out, what the student found out by more research, was in fact that little cilia, the fuzz on the sand dollars, collects the sand, brings it into the hole to take out the phytoplankton for nutrition, and then keeps the dense sand that has iron content inside its body to weigh it down in the ocean. Something that I did not know, something that the student was able to find out on their own. It gave them such a sense of ownership over this knowledge. They wrote a research paper that was really good. It was the equivalent. I've taught college level writing at several different colleges, especially for freshmen, and it was on that level of questioning. One of the things when I taught college was college writing was that students had a really tough transition between regurgitating knowledge in from a traditional high school versus making that step of investigative writing and coming up with your own thesis and argument. And I find that when I'm working with students in Pack Prep, when we're following their interests, they kind of naturally pick up on that style of learning, which is going to suit them much better for more advanced research type education when they get older. So it's been truly a joy to work with some of these students. Some of the other examples, we have a biology project where they made a model of DNA using materials of their choice. They chose candy and coded the bases appropriately with that. We have a history project that I did with a student who was doing World War II, and we each researched our own ancestors and how they would have been active in that time period, and then a chemistry lesson where they created their own magic show. And these are kind of the hooks that will guide the whole unit and they're getting all the content and skills that they need within a more interesting, a more interesting and authentic investigative type project.
Thank you so much, Beth. You're up, Erica.
It's so wonderful and also horrible to follow the teacher share, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm close to tears. That was so wonderful. And you're just like sharing these like one out of a million examples, right? And Beth, like many educators, is so humble and so like poised, and it was really wonderful to learn alongside them. She's also just an expert in designing these really dynamic lessons that capitalize on student interests. We've talked about that a little bit in terms of what a student's going for and the needs. And I will be mindful of time and not bore you with tons of examples, but I do think the examples are what stick in your mind and help make that come to life a bit more. So on the left, you see this different a screenshot of what we call a proposal. And what that means is that you chat with our team, you kind of suss out, here's what I'm looking for, here's what I'm going for. And then we like to include these examples about what might be shipped to you, with the caveat that this is just an example. So if some of these don't spark any interest, or you're like, no, thank you, most of the time we workshop it and make adjustments. We want to make sure that if the course is for credit, that we're honoring that and it's following those means, but we're also making sure to tap into the learner. So an example of that is I met with a student and he kind of told me, I don't like learning. And I said, okay, thanks for sharing. And he was like, wait, Erica, did you hear that? I just said I don't like learning. Like he thought I was going to, lecture him. And I said, yep, that's okay. I'm going to jot a note, but I'm not in the business of convincing you. All that in your background totally makes sense. And then when I said, so hey, what comes to mind when I say science? And he said, vocabulary, writing in a journal, boring, memorization. And so I'm like trying not to laugh, because I'm like, oh, perfect. Like, welcome to Pack Prep. We are going to make this come to life for you in a way that hopefully science will actually be the hands-on experiment, nitty-gritty sand dollar work like Beth is describing. And essentially, he then met with me again at the end of the semester and said, Erica, you were right. Science is actually really fun. I was like, yes, we did it. But again, we're not in the business of sales. We're in the business of following the learner, and that includes taking their background. And part of that is keeping you invested and in the loop along the way. So that last note is that you'll be receiving formal reports, which is everything from our diagnostic assessments in English and math, also our course syllabi and progress and report cards. So we often hear from families like, oh, wow, this is a ton of information. And I get to tell them, don't worry, you're welcome to archive that email and just skim it. We got our next steps. We're tracking all those details for you so that you can be mom, or you can be grandma or brother, and you don't have to, manage the weight of academics. A few more examples for you, speaking of things that we ship to you. Oftentimes when you think of those materials, most families are like, great, that makes sense for math and for science. What about the other subject areas? So from left to right, I'll just briefly touch on what we're seeing. On the left side, you're seeing an example of a package that has historical letters where students analyze and compare them against primary sources, looking at different perspectives, making sure that they're analyzing history, not just through the textbook, but through the lens of today and why it's important to humanity and the world that we live in. Below that is an example of a Sudoku puzzle that essentially taps into the students' problem solving, but they think they're just playing a little game, which is wonderful. Above that, you'll see some folders, a timer, different color pens. That's an example of a kit that we sent to one of our students working on executive functioning. The certain color pen matches the folder, tying into the sticky note that tracks their homework. That was a very literal interpretation of what they needed, and it worked. For some students, that doesn't work for them. I like to tell our families, it's okay if that system doesn't work for you, but we have to find a system. We have to find what works for you so you can track your assignments and feel like you're invested in this learning model. And then on the bottom right, you'll see an example of what we send for chemistry, a molecular kit. And then the far right is an example of a student who was not comfortable doing a dissection, but wanted to crochet. And so we put the two together. Like I said, if you're ever curious about what that looks like, or an example of your specific child's needs, we can always give you some more resources, pointing you to examples. And then we suss out those details with our teachers once we're off and running, and making sure that the instruction continues to meet their needs, because it is over Zoom and we want the student to feel like it's accessible. Speaking of students and making sure that it's accessible, when we think about school, we often think about the social dynamic. Was just chatting with a parent yesterday that said, let's be honest, most of school is not actual academics. There's a lot of social components involved. And while we pride ourselves on the one-on-one academic experience, we also want to give students a chance to connect with each other, getting a feel for our community. So we offer a wide variety of events, such as assemblies that are both divided into grade bands and also school-wide. One of my favorite quotes is from a 7th grader who said, whoa, I had no idea what other Pac Prep students look like. That was so much fun. And I was like, yes, a middle schooler thought the event was fun. That is icing on the cake for me. And then our book club, same thing. We don't want the dry and boring, everybody chatting around the circle book clubs. Our book clubs are designed to foster community. So getting together, chatting about the book, but also doing an art project, writing to the author. And then we also offer exclusive and private author visits. So a group smaller than 10, chatting with the author, talking about their publishing journey, making that writing come to life. We also get our students together to collaborate around projects and special interests, kind of seeing what they want to do and how we can put our heads together in a way that isn't matchmaking, but in a way that makes them feel like they can participate with their peers. And then we also have our wonderful outreach manager, Corey, who totally sells herself short, but she knows so many different people across our extensive professional network. And so we can connect our families to those resources, whether it be events in their local community or just specific needs, such as trying to get a certain assessment or an educational therapist or consultant. And then last but not least, we also offer academic advancements that really like take the learning and like level it up. So that could be that the student writes to a YouTuber, a streamer, that's also writing, sending an email to somebody. They forget about that. Or also just writing through to other students across the world through our brand new Pen Pal program launching this fall. And then we also, like I said, because of our book clubs that include the author visits, students can follow up with the authors at any point throughout the year and continue to foster that experience.
Thanks, Sarah. All right, we're going to hear from Stacy again about the admissions process, cost, and some learning options.
Great. Let me bring you right back to logistics. So Beth and Erica are going to hit us with all the feel good. This is how everyone's going to love learning. But as a logistic minded person myself, I feel like I always want to go to, okay, cool. So like, how's that going to work? And so I'll give you a brief overview here, but I'd also invite any of you to contact our admissions team and we'll talk you through the process. We'll come to you with a custom proposal that's both going to touch on what customized curriculum could look like and what a schedule and cost proposal will look like for your family. One thing I didn't mention previously when I was talking about the single course or the full course options is that we do have rolling admissions, which means that you can enroll with us at any time. We do follow a general academic calendar of fall, spring, and summer, but we can, say you want to join mid-October, school's not working for your kiddo, you decide to come to us now, we have 8 weeks left of the semester, we can do an accelerated fall and then start in with a more normally paced spring. So come to us, we'll make it work for you, we'll make it happen. But with that, then we do have custom schedules for each and every student. Our baseline recommendation is generally 2 hours per course per week, but we might adjust those recommendations based on if your child needs a little bit more hands-on work in English or in math, or if your family is hoping to more closely mimic a traditional school schedule, we can adjust hours, raise them up, raise them down. We can build the schedule around a schedule that works for your family. If your kiddo learns best in the morning, we'll try to get all their classes in between 9 and 12. If your child maybe is participating in sports, or maybe they are not sharp in the morning and so they want mornings off to do other stuff, we can bring them in the afternoon. We often work with kiddos who experience some levels of chronic fatigue, and so we can do a schedule around their sleep schedule. There's all sorts of things we can do. So with that, then, it does make the question of, well, what does tuition cost a little trickier? Because tuition is going to be 100% aligned to the custom schedule we build for your child. But in general, one course is around $5,000 for the semester, and a full-time course load is around $20,000 for the semester. But again, adjusted based on exactly what schedule we end up designing for you. And I should note too that we have index tuition available for families who qualify, and we're very happy to work with any family to make a schedule and a plan that works for you.
Thanks, Stacy. Okay, so we did have a couple of questions that came in before we started the webinar. So Beth, I want to send this one over to you. It's a common question that we get. What do we do about homework and tests?
It depends entirely on the student. I've had students and families who really wanted homework because they wanted the student to have more experience managing their own assignments outside the classroom, especially I'm thinking of one student in particular who was going to a more traditional school the next year. And so we wanted to build up her executive functioning skills. So we made an entire homework system, and a lot of it was practice for math and handwriting. She needed a lot of handwriting help. So we did that as homework. For high school students, a lot of the homework was project based. So steps for research papers, like a bibliography might be due 1 week, and it was always set up very clearly with the student for expectations. And then some students, especially I'm thinking of some who had mental health challenges or fatigue issues, we didn't have homework, and we were able to get just as much done during the course. They didn't get quite as much practice as they might have in a traditional school, but they didn't necessarily need it, and the rest was more important. So it's entirely up to the situation. I don't think I've ever had a student where I felt like I was failing them in terms of not giving them enough work or practice, or they're not gaining the content in an appropriate timeline. It's really dependent on what the family needs.
Yeah. I think it's hard for parents to wrap their mind around the transition from a classroom, model to one-on-one. And this example sort of helps. A student doesn't need to do a worksheet with 40 math problems on it for the teacher to check for understanding. That's a classroom management tool. But when they're doing the work live one-on-one with the teacher, that's part of the process. And so there isn't that need for tons of homework outside of class.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. That's a better, that's something I would want to add to. Yeah.
Yeah, it helps. Okay, last question before we wrap up. Erica, I'm going to send this one to you. What do we do about kids who are resistant to Zoom, or parents who are worried that, they had a bad experience during the COVID pandemic and are just not sure how well their kids are going to adapt to online learning?
Totally. I get this question often, and it's sort of a real talk. Great, Erica, that sounds wonderful. How do we get them to log on? What are you going to do to engage them? So basically, I'll start with, we're open to feedback. So that means, hey, not coming to class, this isn't working. They mentioned this part. The teacher said this thing. There's a reason why we have a leadership team here to support. I like to say that I won't annoy you with check-ins, but I will try to check in so that we can get some feedback, because you're on the other end of the screen. And the student, if it's a one-on-one, student is 50%. Teacher is 50%. So if it's not working for the student, it's not working for the collective class. And then essentially what we do is we just say, pandemic learning was totally different. I can say that. I was a classroom teacher in the height of 2020. I took all my students, we worked online. There were pets involved. There was vacuuming. I was like, this is chaotic. We're doing our best, no judgment to anybody, but essentially with a one-on-one, there's no opportunity for the kid to kind of slack off and be off in the distance and be bored. We're moving the instruction at a pace that works for them, and they also get to buy in. So what do you want to learn? I don't know. Great, let's pull from these topics. Ooh, that thing reminds me of this portion, and then I want to cover this thing, and it kind of all comes to life. And then I'm also always happy to meet with the student directly. So that like transfer between our older students, when they're like, I don't know, it was fine, mom, stop asking me. That's when I get to say, hey, mom, is it cool if I touch base with that student? I'm happy to meet with them. They don't usually like to chat over the phone, so we'll meet over Zoom. I'll talk to them about how do you learn best, give some examples, and I'll just continue to touch base so that we can make this work for the teacher and for the student. I could talk about that forever, so I'll stop there.
Great. Thank you, Erica. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us for this open house and bearing with our technical difficulties right there at the beginning. We hope that you have a sense of why Pack Prep is such a great option for families who are wanting that flexibility and the highly personalized educational experience. Feel free to reach out to me directly with any follow-up questions. My email is listed here. You'll also be receiving a link to the recording via email, and you're welcome to respond to me that way as well. So we hope to welcome you to the Pack Prep family and just have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.
Thanks so much, Corey.